Welcome everyone to the final talk for our Futures Day at BTF. How's everyone feeling? Yeah, okay, amazing. I love to see there's still some energy in the audience. And now I'm glad that energy is still there because we've got some amazing speakers here today to talk about their career journeys that they've had so far and some of the learnings that they've had throughout. We're hoping that this panel is going to be very informative. We're going to have some actions for you to take away and, yeah, hopefully some learnings. But we can't share those actions until we know who we're speaking to. So I'm going to start off with Jasmine. If you can tell me, who you are, what's been your career journey so far, and what was your first interaction with tech as a child?
Great. So my name is Jasmine. I'm Flemish, Belgian, and Black American. My career journey so far. So I went to undergrad in the UK, and I did a placement year at Pfizer, which was really informative, and I enjoyed that. And then I decided to do a PhD in the US. I studied cancer biology, and there I did an internship at a law firm, the Fish & Richardson. It's where I currently am now. While I was at Fish, I decided to go to law school. So I also have a JD. And that was all in the US. And then 3 years ago, I moved to Munich, Germany. And now I'm training to be a European patent attorney. So what I do is I'm a life sciences patent prosecution attorney. I do intellectual property for patents. I help inventors and companies protect their biological inventions, anything with pharma. I also do microbiology, immunology, all that. The law firm doesn't just do life sciences, we also do tech. So that's part of why I'm here today. So if you're a software engineer or in computer science, mechanical engineering, there's space for you there. And I guess my first introduction to tech was probably my brother's video games, of just seeing how that was, and then realizing it wasn't for me.
Hi guys, so my name's Amber Jarrett, and my mic's on. Are we still here? Yeah, we're still here. So my name's Amber Jarrett, and I work in ad tech in business development. But outside of work, I also make content on like everything that we weren't taught in school. So like money management to interview advice and assessment centers, and I also speak as well. Oh, and my first interaction with tech. The furthest back I can remember is watching High School Musical and like Sharpay with her slide-up phone, and like back then, like having a whole keypad at the bottom of the phone was like crazy. So then after that, I ought to get one of those phones for my birthday. So that's like my earliest memory of it.
Hi guys, my name is James Mboma. I'm a software engineering student, but I recently completed a placement year at Nike, and I worked there within the Netherlands, and I also did freelance web development as well. With my first introduction to tech, I guess I'd say I used to go to the library to play a Kids Next Door like video game. I don't know if anyone knows it here, but yeah, that's my introduction.
Amazing. Video games and phones from High School Musical. I was also a video games person, so I can attest to that. So thank you for giving that introduction to yourselves. So let's talk about the expectations and the realities of the tech industry and what you had going into tech and what the reality was when you got there. So did working in the tech industry kind of meet those expectations that you had for it? Was there anything that you were surprised by? Let's hear your thoughts. And I'd love to start with James for this one.
Yeah, of course. So before I started, I initially just thought, okay, yeah, when I go there, I'm just going to be programming consistently. That's all I'm just going to be focusing on. But I was there for a rude awakening. There was a lot more meetings and stakeholder planning than I expected. And there was a lot of politics as well on the type of projects you could suggest, because there has to be a bottom line. So that was something that was quite surprising. And also, there was a lot of technologies I didn't think I would have to learn. But yeah, so I had to adapt a lot. Yeah.
Amazing. Sounds like a lot of learning of different tools and technologies, and like you say, playing the politics a little bit within the firm. Amber, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I'd say for me, the expectations versus reality was more on the side of like how much is available for you to do in the non-technical space. So like I knew that I have like no interest in learning how to like program and stuff like that. So just the fact that there's so many opportunities available outside of that, like business development, sales, or in that sort of like field. But I think once I got to the workplace, it was more of a reality check how much in terms of like the politics that you have to learn how to navigate and just know how to work your way around. Yeah.
Amazing. And actually, Jasmine, what I'd love to focus on for your question is you're coming from the Netherlands. So it would be great to hear kind of your expectations and reality between different cultures and different countries within the tech industry as well.
Yeah, thank you. So I would say there's a lot of similarities, but then also quite differences between various cultures. I would say more of an Anglo-Saxon culture and then more continental Europe. In the Anglo world, I felt that as a woman, there was more awareness about women in tech, but there was less about being a black person in tech. And whereas in continental Europe, there wasn't this same dichotomy. It was very different. But when you look at in terms of workplaces and work cultures, Anglo-Saxon world is very work-focused in the sense that that's your life. You work to live as opposed to continental Europe where it's more working is to help you live. You just use the funds to fund your fun, essentially. And in the more specifics, I think there's a creativity that comes from the US, this innovation, proactiveness. It can come from anywhere, whereas in Europe it's very hierarchical. It has to come from the right places, the right people, and it's not something that just anyone can tap into.
Even though it sounds like quite different in terms of the culture, it's still understanding that culture that goes there and like helping that to accelerate your own career, right? Yeah. Amazing. Well, thank you for covering that for us. So you kind of touched on it briefly there, Jasmine, but what I'd also like to look at is maybe some of the challenges that you faced in your career so far, whether that's on the kind of understanding the culture of your organization or understanding like what's next to progress in your role. Yeah, I'd like to hear about those challenges and how you overcame them. And James, I'd like to start with you.
Yeah. So this one kind of touches with the expectations versus reality. One of the main things, if you'd asked me this about 3 months ago, I would have probably said it was presenting, but I've kind of come to the realization it wasn't really presenting, it was more imposter syndrome. So I'll be in situations where I'm expected to present and I'm looking at all of these higher ups and I'm like, okay, what do I have to give you if you already know everything? So I would always kind of doubt myself and then that's when I would struggle to present. So that's one of the challenges I had. And to get over this fear, there was a lot of teaching myself these new technologies, learning all of these new frameworks and all of these new technologies, but also putting myself out there, going outside of my comfort zone. So things just like presenting, hosting meetings, and like having brainstorming sessions as well. So that's kind of how I tackled that. And over time, I gradually saw my confidence growing and myself like fitting in and seeing, okay, yeah, I have a place in this company and I know where I belong. Yeah.
Great response. And actually, I'd like you to answer a second question, which is, what is imposter syndrome for the people in the audience who don't know?
Yeah, so imposter syndrome is where you land a role, it's probably your dream role, you're there, and then you're like, oh, I don't think I know what I'm doing. I feel like I'm going to get found out, I'm going to get fired. They're going to be like, okay, yeah, this person doesn't belong. And most of the time, if you feel like that, it's okay. Because I know a lot of software engineers who go through that and a lot of machine learning engineers who go through that. It's just a matter of time and then just putting yourself out there. And it's just give it time. You'll build your confidence with experience, honestly.
I mean, I think I can speak for all of us here when we've all faced imposter syndrome at some point within our careers. But moving on slightly, Amber, would you like to add to this question in terms of like any challenge that you faced and how you overcame it?
I would say the biggest challenge for me is like trusting the advice from seniors, because like, for me, the naughtiest that I got in secondary school, like, I remember trying to get an A in my coursework for science because I knew if I got that, then I went to the exam. I only had to do X amount to get an A overall. And I remember my teacher marking it, and I was like, but are you sure it's an A? And she was like, it's fine, Amber, it's fine. So then I took my coursework from her and then gave it to another teacher. And then I got in trouble for, like, undermining them. And then when I got my result back, it wasn't an A, it was a B. And I feel like that's where those trust issues started. And then it's like followed me further along in my career now, where I've trusted the advice of someone and it's led me to the wrong place. So I struggle trusting like where people are coming from and like the decisions that I've made based on advice that I've been given, which wasn't the best. And it's like put me in positions that I'd rather not have been in. So I think so to that I would say, definitely have like someone who understands where you're trying to go, where you're at, and speaking to most people in the audience as well, make sure having like a black mentor or a black person that can understand from that perspective, because it's very different when they're navigating and explaining experiences from their side to other sides as well.
Great response there. And actually, I'd like to dig in a bit further there and ask, like, there's people in the audience here like, okay, I would love a kind of mentor or somebody to support in the same facet that you had. How would people go about finding someone?
Yeah, so I've never actually had a mentor, so that's probably why I've struggled so much. But with me, I think I don't prioritize having a mentor. I prioritize having a board of advisors. So where before I've had that one person and followed that one person and end up in the wrong place, now I have different people that I can go to for the same question to then have a better like analysis and think from that perspective. But like in terms of like mentors, yeah, I couldn't even tell you. I've never had a mentor.
I might be able to add to this because I remember when I was starting my career, I always wanted a mentor as well. So what I normally used to do is I used to just reach out to people who were in positions where I wanted to be, and then just message them on LinkedIn and then just be like, hey, I wonder if you could just do a quick one-to-one with me, and then we can just start discussing and then start building a relationship from that. And also just joining networks like Color in Tech. They also offer, there'll also be opportunities where they're giving out mentors, and also within your universities as well. If you look into it, there's probably a mentoring scheme. So yeah, those are some of the places.
Great examples there, and great shout out for Color in Tech. Okay, Jasmine, I'd love to come to you. Tell us about one of your challenges and how you overcame it.
Sure. So one of my challenges was being underestimated. And unfortunately, this happened at every stage of my career. From when I was before going to uni, I was told that as a woman, I shouldn't go into the sciences because I would never find a husband, and men don't like smart women. So that was my physics teacher told me that. I disregarded that and still went. And then when I was in uni and I wanted to do a PhD, I was told, don't go. They only take Americans at the schools I was applying to. You'll never get in. I applied anyway, and I got in. Then the next school I went to, same thing. You don't have the right scores. You won't get in. I'm like, but I have a PhD. Surely this will help. That helped. So every step of the way, there was always someone telling me that I wasn't good enough or that I couldn't make it or for whatever reason. And then when I did do it, it was like, oh, luck. And it's not luck. It's you work hard, you try. And I think the best thing that I had was just not believing what other people said, knowing in my own worth, believing that I should try, and if I fail, that's fine, but at least I tried. Yeah.
Amazing. So we've been focusing on your current careers and challenges, but let's take a rewind, actually, and let's look at some advice that we can give to the audience in terms of being in the roles and like the lessons that you wish you knew about getting a job in the tech industry. So my question to my panelists is, what do you wish you knew about getting a job in tech, whether that's in a technical role or a non-technical role? And Amber, I'd like to start with you.
Yeah, so 3 things I would say when sort of interviewing. The first thing I would say is to use the interviewer's name, Catherine, because the thing is, when communicating with people, like there's a whole psychology behind like hearing your name, and like like when your mom says your name, it's got your attention. So it's that exact same sort of concept when you're using it in an interview, and it just demands their attention. Like interviews are interviewing probably 20 people a day, so be the one that they remember, and it just helps in that way. The The second thing I would say is to be up to date with what's happening on the company's social media. So how the product or the company or the culture is perceived, and find out a way to integrate that into conversation. An interview should never be someone interrogating you. It's supposed to be a conversation. So that just helps to break down that barrier and also integrate that sort of insight into it, and just helps impress them in that way. And the third thing I would say is, in terms of LinkedIn, like I hear a lot of the time people speak about like, oh, after the interview, message the recruiter or the interviewer on LinkedIn and say, oh, thank you, so nice to interview today and stuff like that. And like, I personally have never tried that. I know it's been successful for people, but I just personally wouldn't, because I just couldn't understand, like, if an interviewer is having so many people saying the exact same thing, how effective that is in them being able to remember you. But I guess it doesn't hurt in trying. But one thing I would say in terms of LinkedIn that I actually did was find a person at the company in the role that you're applying for, but at a junior level, because if they're at a junior level, they've got more time on their hands, and then you can DM them on LinkedIn, message them on LinkedIn, and sort of say, my interview's coming up on the 11th of October. It would be really great if we could jump on a call and you can like have a look at the deck that I've prepared or go through some questions, and that's going to be your inside man. That's going to give you the real tea. Like that helps. Like I'm pretty sure that contributed like a good 70% of how successful my interview. So yeah, that's what I would say for interviewing.
Fantastic piece of advice there on connecting with somebody else in the organisation, in the role that you want to be, but like you say, slightly junior perhaps. And I think as well, something I want to pick up on with interviewing is you're interviewing the company as much as they're interviewing you. It's got to be a two-way street, a two-way conversation where they're selling themselves to you as much as you are to them. But James, do you have anything that you want to add?
Amber's basically said it perfectly. The only thing I would add is just remember to. I know if you're going for like a technical role, we tend to just focus on how's the technical interview going to go, and then we start to forget there is going to be like a personality interview. They're just going to want to see how you are. You have to remember, depending on who you're being interviewed by, you might end up having to work with this person. So if you don't let your personality shine, they're going to look at you and they'll be like, do I really see myself working with you? And then that might end up, you might have all of the qualifications you need, but because you're so nervous at that time, you just were like a robot, and they just think, this person, they're just going to have to move to the side. I think that's the only thing I'd have to add. Yeah.
Be your authentic self in the interview, right?
Sorry?
Being your authentic self in the interview.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Jasmine, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I don't want to echo what everyone else has said already, but I would just add to look at the people who are mid-level, so someone who is not just immediately your peer, just to see how they're doing. Look at them, because that's an indicator of how you'll be most likely as well. So if they're happy, if they're looking sane, if they're still happy to work there, if they're out the door, if there is no one in that mid-level position, that's telling you something as well. So look into that. Definitely use the resources you have. LinkedIn has been mentioned. Find out who works there. Try to get an informal conversation with them. I have loads of people who reach out to me as well to ask for that initial contact, so they can say, oh, I spoke to Jasmine, this is what she said, and just get a feel for the place as well. And I would say trust your intuition as well as you're going through this process. I'm a planner. I planned out my entire life when I was probably 18. I knew what I was going to do, when I was going to do it. But things didn't happen as I wanted them to on both my end and just the world changing. And so don't force something that doesn't fit. Like, yes, you made a plan. You want to stick to it, but it's okay if it deviates. It's okay if it changes, because all those are learning opportunities. And at the end of the day, if you had been stubborn and stuck with it, you might not have gotten to the position where you are now. So just follow your gut intuition. If something seems right, just go for it.
There's something I'd like to touch upon in what you mentioned there, and one of them is career change that you mentioned and kind of embracing that. Tell us a bit more about that, and in terms of like, how did you identify that you wanted to make the change, and how did you go about doing it?
That's a good question. I guess I did by knowing what I didn't want. And again, I looked at the people who were mid-level, a little more senior, and I realized that I didn't want to be a research scientist. When I started my undergrad, I thought I was going to be a scientist and work in a lab all my life. And until I realized that at a certain point, you just become a manager. Not there's anything wrong with being a manager, but I didn't want to manage people so quickly. I wanted to stick with the science, stay closer with that. And then I just started asking people around me. I took advantage of the fact that I was junior, that people underestimate me, so they're happy to take you for coffee, take you for lunch, and tell you the truth about what's really going on and how they got to their career. I mean, so I used that, and I heard about people in IP, and then I decided, okay, intellectual property, what does that look like? How do I fit into that? And then doing an internship, and then realizing I could see myself in this career. And thinking about it as a career as opposed to just a job, because you spend so much time doing this one thing that you have to think also not just about the finances and the title that comes with it, but the person that they are as well. Like, do you like these type of people? What I like about what I do is that not only do I get to stick with science, which is what I love, I'm a scientist turned lawyer, but in my legal career and being a service industry, I get to also help people. I get to do pro bono work. I get to help asylum cases. I get to do transgender name changes. I get to do various things that are not within my normal realm, but I'm allowing myself to be flexible in that aspect. So I think just, again, if you have more than one passion, it's okay to do things on the side, and maybe one day they'll come together, but at least try to keep it as broad as possible if you can.
Thank you for that. So we're going to move on to our next part of advice that we want to give. And this can be on networking, interviewing, starting your career in general, where you're at now and progression. But what advice would you give to your younger self as you're starting your career that you think would have impacted you today? And I'm going to start with Jasmine for this one.
So I already touched on this already, but just being okay with deviating from your plan and being kind to yourself. I mean, you might think you have to be perfect. No one's perfect. It's okay to make mistakes. They're not always mistakes. It's just a different opportunity that's presented itself. And also it depends on how you spin it. So at the end of the day, it will be okay. So I would tell myself to be kinder to myself, perhaps be friendlier. There's a lot of negative self-talk that we can get sometimes with going with imposter syndrome of you have to be a certain way because of the way other people make you feel in that role, or just thinking that you're not good enough. Get rid of all that negative talk. It's like, think of yourself as how you would speak to your best friend. You wouldn't tell your best friend these things, so why do you tell it to yourself? And self-care is another thing that I would emphasize in my younger days, of just not letting the job consume you, because it will if you let it.
Over to you, Amber.
I would say, so you mentioned networking. I would say in terms of networking, the first thing I would say is go to a networking event by yourself. Like, Black Tech Fest last year was the first networking event that I'd ever gone to, and my brother came with me, and then he left me halfway through because he had to go somewhere, and it just throws you in the deep end. But you grow the fastest when you're uncomfortable. So I'd say do that, and then also hand in hand, it makes you more approachable when you're by yourself. So people are more likely to speak to you. Like, you're in your most vulnerable state, and that's how people connect. So I would say that in terms of networking, like, just generally speaking. But I'd say as well, networking within, like, environment, like within work or whatever. Like, I know people do, like, the coffee chats, like, what did you do over the weekend? How's the kids and stuff like that. But one thing that I found easier and it feels more comfortable doing is that sometimes I'll do, like, if I'm in a meeting, I'll take the notes of what someone was speaking about, or not even the notes, but the questions that I had off of them, follow up after with an email saying, hi, James, you were speaking about this, but it would be good if we could have, like, a one-to-one, just going through a couple of things off the back of that, and pinpoint the 3 to 5 areas that you wanted to speak about, so they know you're not wasting your time. And this does 2 things. You've now expanded your network in the workplace, and then word goes around about you behind your back in a positive way, because it's like you haven't involved your manager to speak to that person, but that person's now going to involve your manager when they're saying, oh, yeah, she was actually really intrigued finding out about this. Like, she's very proactive and stuff like that. So that's something I wish I did from earlier on. But yeah, I would say mainly that. Yeah.
Fantastic. I love the proactivity that comes in both your recommendations there, whether, like you say, it's actively going to those networking events or it's taking that next step afterwards to follow up get that time in and show that passion, which will travel further. But I have a follow-up. So many people here are probably like, yes, I'd love to go to more networking events and be part of it. Where would you find networking events?
I would go on to Eventbrite. I didn't even know, because I usually stumble across Eventbrite because if I see something, but I never even thought that you could just download the app and search the type of events that you're interested in. So I'd say go into Eventbrite, search in that sort of way. Obviously, Black Tech Fest have this once a year, so definitely stay in touch with, keep up with Black Tech Fest. That's probably how I'd find them the most.
And finally, our last piece of advice. James, what would you like to say?
I'll probably say this is more for people in the technical roles. Obviously, it's a very competitive market, and you find yourself comparing yourself to other people who are in the same, who probably your age mates or people in your class, and you'll see they've got projects, they've got all of this experience. I would say even if you don't have projects, try and pick up projects, do them. And also, one thing people never really tell you about is to do certificates, like certs. They're actually they are very helpful. They helped me land my role. So, and universities actually tend to be partnered up with big companies like Microsoft, and you can get these certificates. Normally, they cost like £150. With your university, you can get it for free. It takes about 30 hours of learning. You can do that. You can do like 2 in the span of your whole university year if you really wanted to, and then you can get those certificates. They can help you stand out. And I would say, honestly, just try and help yourself stand out a little bit more by going to events, going to hackathons if you can find some. One thing I would recommend, normally what I tend to do if I'm looking for an event, I'll type a city and then I'll type what I'm interested in. So I'll type like Manchester machine learning event, and then surprisingly, there will actually be a lot of events, and they're actually very useful to network within. So that's one thing I'll definitely recommend.
Amazing. I love your point on courses and education. I'm going to come to you in a second, Amber, but I want to follow up on that and say, unfortunately, some people have graduated and don't have the joy of the lovely free resources that are given by universities. But where are some other places where we can get courses for free or take advantage of them to, again, help build your CV and your experience?
Yeah, Google actually have free courses where you can do them. Coursera, there's a lot of free courses on Coursera. I would definitely recommend using Coursera. And there's a site called HackerRank. If you've done technical interviews, you've probably had to use this platform. They do certificates as well, so they are really useful.
Amazing. And in addition to that as well, Udemy and LinkedIn Learning also have some great ones as well. But Amber, I saw that you were going to add to that, so I'm going to go back over to you for your comment.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say off the back of what James was saying with networking as well, I'd say it's also important to network sideways as well as upwards, because it's easy to, obviously want to go and speak to the higher ups or the seniors. But one thing one of my managers said to me that really humbled me one time, and he was like, don't take for granted the people beside you, because you may see them as, oh, they're just your level, but this person who's just your level in 2 years' time is going to go off and work at this company and this company. So it's important to also look what's happening beside you as well, and do pay attention to that.
And there's a secondary part of it as well, is if people come to you for advice or try to connect with you, also be willing to help. And being on that both sides, building that relationship both ways, because that could become useful in the future too. Amazing. So we've got 1 minute left to wrap up. And what I'd love to do is if each of you want to just remind everybody who you are, what you do, and how can people connect with you after today. We'll start with Jasmine.
You can connect with me through LinkedIn. You can also go to Fisher Richardson's website and see more about the science that I do. There's a bit more about the clients that I have, things like that. Our website in general is a great opportunity to find out about the career itself. We have job listings in Germany and the US and China as well. We don't have a base in the UK yet, but I'm working on it, hopefully. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, so Sorry, that was a bit louder than I thought. I would say definitely follow me on TikTok. That's where I give all my free advice. But also Instagram. You can connect me on Instagram or LinkedIn. But I also do offer like interview prep one-to-one service as well and an interview guide. So I can definitely help out if anyone does need any additional help.
Yeah, so with me, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can just shoot me a message if you ever need any help with anything, whether it's a CV or you just want any advice starting your career in machine learning or software engineering. I'm always happy to help, so yeah, that's why you can connect with me.
Amazing. And I'm Catherine from Colour in Tech. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. But first, I'd love for you to give me a round of applause for our wonderful panelists.